Oh boy. Good morning, everybody. Can everyone hear me? Oh my God. My skin is very dry. I apologize. Thank you, Fenty. Wonderful. So, I'll go ahead and get started since I know that this is going to be, we're starting in a minute. So, I have the distinct pleasure of having been in contact with a woman whose name is Tara Kangarlou, who is an Iranian journalist. And she so graciously offered her time today for 30 minutes to talk about some of the things that are happening in Iran. So I'll just have a second to have everybody come into the room, and then I will add her into the live. By the way, I saw Phantom a few weeks ago, and it is the best show I've ever seen. Well done, everyone. Good morning from Japan. Wow, thank you for joining. Okay, great. So it's 12 o'clock. Thank you all so much for joining. I'll go ahead and, hold on one second. Wait until I see the request in there. Haiti-san was the best show I've ever seen. Appreciate it. Thank you for supporting theater. Oh, yes. I'm sorry I can't be there. I had the COVID. What can you do? So let's see. Sorry, everybody. Great. Just waiting for another second. I'm very nervous, if you can't tell. In a good way. There she is. Hello. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm so happy to be speaking with you.
Thank you so much for generously offering your time. Do you mind if I bio real quick and tell everybody of all the incredible things that you are and you've done?
No, you're so kind. I just want to make sure that I'm connected properly because on my Instagram it says connecting. But is everything connected and all good?
Can everyone hear us at the same time? Are we on the same? I can hear you perfectly. So let's see. Can a few people give us maybe a thumb? Okay, somebody said we can see and hear. So we are good to go.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Excellent.
Make sure I'm saying it correctly. What is the correct pronunciation of your name? Just because I am the same way with my name.
Okay, wonderful. Well, Tara, which
All right.
I'm really grateful to my parents because it's more universal than my last name, Kangarlou. I'm Tara Kangarlou, and I'm so happy to be with you guys today.
Thank you so much, Tara. So Tara Kangarlou is an award-winning Iranian-American journalist who has previously worked with news outlets such as NBC, CNN, Al Jazeera America. He is a frequent on-air contributor for various international news outlets covering the MENA region and global affairs, and writes regularly for Time magazine. She has also spent much time covering the rise and fall of ISIS, the conflicts in Syria and Iraq, as well as other pressing humanitarian issues worldwide. Born out of her extensive reporting and firsthand knowledge of the global refugee crisis in 2016, she founded Art of Hope, the first American nonprofit that strictly focuses on supporting the mental well-being of war-torn refugees and IDPs in vulnerable host communities. She is also the author of the award-winning book, The Heartbeat of Iran, that provides an unprecedented insight into the many nuances, textures, and complexities of life in today's Iran, as told through the stories of ordinary Iranians living inside the country. She is currently an adjunct professor at Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service Teaching at the intersection of journalism and public diplomacy. Tara was born and raised in Tehran.
Yes.
Iran until she moved to the States in her late teens. At the moment, she splits her time between London and Washington. She has a bachelor's degree in English literature from UCLA and a master's degree in journalism from USC. Woo, girl.
Wow. Thank you. No
So,
one ever reads my full bio. They stop at having a hard time pronouncing my last name. So,
well, you know what? I can't tell you how thankful I am for you for reaching for the DM and just offering your time because um, it's we have very little information and filtering through social media, which isn't a new source. Um, it's just wonderful to just spread some incredible information and get insight. So I guess we'll jump right into it. Tara, can you quickly tell us about the protests in Iran and how they started and where are we now? Where are we as of today?
thank you so much. And as you said, I just want to echo this sentiment and reality, rather, that social media is not a news source. Social media is a great platform to talk about current events. But one of the values of having discussions as such, not with me only, but rather professional working journalists, is that we can talk about credible information as well and where folks can get their source of information. But talking about the protests in Iran, right now we're almost 2 months into these unprecedented protests. And the reason I say unprecedented is because, unlike what we've seen before, people are united on a different field, on a different front, from all walks of life, from all groups of socioeconomic backgrounds. People are united, young and old. And as you know, and as I think your audience have seen, all of this in many ways started and was ignited by the really brutal death of Mahsa Jina Amini, a young 22-year-old Iranian girl from the city of Saqqez in Kurdistan province of Iran. And she was on holiday in Tehran, and unfortunately she was detained by this vile morality police apparatus, which I'm happy to explain and talk about. We saw what happened, after. But really, Eva, I want to say that Mahsa's death was once again a reminder for millions of Iranians, both in Iran and outside, of the perpetual uh, ignorance and choking of the government of any sort of freedom that Iranians want to have and can have inside their country. And so Iranian people were already angry, they were disillusioned, they were upset at the government, they were frustrated with many things, including many forceful mandates and policies imposed by the government. And this event ignited their fervent call for change, which
Mm,
we continue to see, and unfortunately, their voices have been cracked down and so on, and we can talk about that. But that's just to give a sense of how it started and where are we now, two months in.
absolutely. Thank you so much. A lot of people are calling this a woman-led revolution. Can you explain a little bit of why people are calling it that and tell us about some of the women that we're seeing on the streets of Iran?
Absolutely. So again, because these protests were ignited by Mahsa's, again, unfortunate and sad death, uh, her face and her story really became a symbol of the Iranian people, both men and women, everyone's fight for freedom and fight for change. But then again, we saw on the streets immediately in the aftermath young people, young Iranians as young as 14, 15, 16, on the streets, many of whom were girls, many of them courageously, ripping up the scarf, ripping up, the the head covers, and chanting the slogan that has in many ways become synonymous with the protest, Zan Zendegi Azadi, women life freedom. And I think that's why the world sees this as a woman-led movement. And also, I wrote an in-depth piece on this, in fact, why it's called a woman led protests. You can, folks can read it in Time magazine. It's online. But one of the reasons is uh, young women right now, more than ever in Iran's history of the last 40 years, but even before, recognize their rights, know that they have to have the same uh, seat at the table as men, and they are fighting next to their fathers, brothers, husbands, boyfriends, and they see themselves as equal. And I think what we've seen in Iran the last 2 months have shown that, have reflected that. But also, I want to say, women, again, as we've seen images coming out of Iran, have been brutally arrested. And also, after Mahsa, so many young Iranian girls and Iranian women have died as well. They've been, shot on the street. They've been killed after coming out of, or rather, excuse me, if they died after coming out of prison. And there's so many ambiguous details around what happened in prison, the aftermath, and so on. And that's why women, especially right now, have a strong voice. Their voices are bolder than ever before, and that's reflective again of their fervent desire for change, and also the fact that they see themselves as equal to their male counterparts in this fight.
Absolutely. Um, you were raised and born in Iran yourself.
Yeah.
Can you share some of the stories that you encountered with the morality police, and who I've never heard of? So, if for the people who have never heard of them or that term, could you possibly explain more about who these people are?
Absolutely. If I want to put things in perspective, if that's possible for your audience, Iran is a country of 83 million people. That's a huge country,
Yeah,
right? And I often say in my talks that, this is a country of 83 million human beings rather than 83 million nuclear heads. And there's a distinction in that. And, for the longest time, Iran has been defined by its, politics and these angry ayatollahs, these clerics that the ordinary people have really nothing in common with, and what we hear on the news, and this narrow lens that we in the United States have into Iran. But I want to emphasize on the fact that, young Iranians, just like you and I, and those who are watching this, they have the same hopes and dreams and aspirations as so many millions of people worldwide, okay? And they are representatives of that Iranian society versus these vile forces that we hear about and see on television. They are not Iran, and they are not representative of the people. And so, coming back to the morality police, they are a small yet very powerful group and apparatus, part of the system of governance in Iran. And since the Islamic Revolution took over in 1979, the government has found many ways to uh, interrupt in people's lives, in public, in private, controlling everything that they could, right? And so this morality police is a leg of this controlling mechanism. And so they've been around in different forms, different shapes, and I remember encountering them, and I remember dealing with them. I mean, listen, things have changed. Things were way more strict back in the 90s, and then started changing in the 2000s, and depending on the level of conservatism from the president or the government at the time. If you had more hardliner forces, it was more strict. If you had I guess more lenient folks, it was less. But the bottom line is, these folks exist for the sheer fact of controlling people's lives,
yeah,
interrupting, harassing, telling people what to do, telling women to dress this way, that way. Even men. I also want to mention this, that I remember when I was young and when I was in Iran, if men would wear tight t-shirts, colorful t-shirts, they
mm,
were worried that they would be harassed by the morality police. I mean, I remember there was this very popular cafe. It was a food court, actually. It was a food court that every Thursday, it was the hottest place to go to, the place to be seen. And, you know, we would dress up, you know, the most colorful scarf, you know, whatever was trendy at the time. And we'll go there, and we were constantly worried that these guys are parked and at any moment they may come and harass you. Now, some get lucky, you pay, you know, you pay them off, but some don't,
Yeah.
right? And they get, you know, in detention. And I listen, even my own sister, this is in the early 90s,
Mm.
right? She was with her boyfriend, and by the way, we knew the family, and you know, whatever, they were on a walk and they were arrested, and we get a, you know, my dad got a call and said, you know, they're in, you know, this place was Zara, and that's sort of the main headquarters, and you know, they were whipped, right? And my dad couldn't pay them off. The point is that it's such an opaque and medieval and vile system that its in entirety of existence defies any uh, freedom, any freedom of expression in life. And again, that's very representative of what the government of Iran stands for. They stand for oppressing any sort of freedom and oppression, and people suffer from that on all fronts. And the morality police is just one of these prongs.
Wow. So you've had experiences and memories of people,
Yeah.
of your own experiences and in your family and your circle of friends for quite a while from of the morality police.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they exist, but you know, I want to also say about the thing is, and this is reflective of the uh, resilience and desire of Iranian people, especially the youth, to move forward despite all the challenges. Uh, Throughout the years, Iranians, again, especially young folks, have found ways to circumvent, you know, these crazies, these people. And you know, for example, again, I remember we knew the routes that these guys won't be parked, you know, let's say on a Friday night if we wanted to go out. We knew, okay, how to, you know, take another street and just circumvent the chance of being harassed by them. And again, things have changed the span of 40 years. Right now, when you go to Tehran, you know, I have friends in Tehran, and in fact, you know, my husband was there not long ago. But you know, you go to restaurants, you go to places where girls are wearing, you know, their headscarves way back, and you know, you would not never imagine
Mhm.
this to be a confined society. But then you never know.
Yeah.
Next door, you know, someone may come in and harass someone. So the bottom line is that this is a society where its youth have found ways to circumvent these uh, forces, but at the same time, their entire existence should not be, right?
Yeah.
Why should a society grow to become creative on finding secretive or, you know, manipulative ways to express themselves or express their freedom, where they in reality should be doing it without any oppression? And listen, Iranian people, the youth are incredibly creative. They're so educated, they're sophisticated, they're capable, and the fact that they've made so much progress, and they live life as normal as possible, in so many ways, the same way that, you know, you and I do, and enjoy the same things that you and I do, I think is just reflective and representative of their tremendous zeal, potential, and desire, and right, quite frankly, to be part of the global community.
Yes.
And that's what they're fighting for. Really, that's what they're fighting for.
Um, wow, yes. And it's so true. Like the youth, the young women, the youth, the young people who are just so they are so capable. Like you said,
Yeah.
that's absolutely true. In your latest book, The Heartbeat of Iran, you tell readers in the US and around the world the many colorful stories of ordinary Iranians inside Iran. What made you decide to write this award-winning book?
Thank you. Before that, I want to share this thought on the women and girls, which I think is really important, and I really really hope your audience take this to heart. If one thing out of this conversation would stay with folks, I hope it's this one, and that is, Iranian women are some of the most creative, resilient, and courageous women in the world. that despite all the restrictions, confinements, patriarchy, and holding back of their dreams, they've pushed forward and they've reached their goals in many ways, and
Mhm.
they made strides, and that is important. Iranian women are not victims, and I wrote this in my Time article. Iranian women are not victims, Eva. They are survivors. They are survivors of an oppressive system that, despite all the restrictions and all the challenges, have made strides. And that's again reflective of the tremendous potential that exists in this country of 83 million. You know, I mean, 60% of college graduates are women. Women are part of the workforce, despite, again, all the restrictions and challenges. So I think that's very telling. And if we focus on these stories, if we focus on these um, potentials out of Iran, I think we have an opportunity to connect with millions of people inside the country. And that leads to your question about my book. You know, I worked as a professional, you know, American journalist in American mainstream. And going back to my earlier point, unfortunately, Iran was seen always through the lens of its government, you know, its politicians. And for me, as someone who grew up in Iran and understood the society so well, but also understood my American counterparts, I knew that, you know, there's so much more to talk about. Iran should be humanized. Iranian stories should be told through the lens of its people, not the government. They're not the full story, and they're not representatives of the of this nation. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to take time to focus on the human voices on the ground. I wanted to amplify the voices of Iranian people, their stories, you know, a farmer, a teacher, an artist, a diver, you know, I wanted to focus on the LGBTQ community in Iran. I wanted to focus on Iranian food, and also Iran's history in the context of people's lives, Ava. And that's how we in the United States can connect with the millions of people in Iran who are isolated
Yeah.
because of their government. So storytelling matters. And Eva, if you don't tell your story, someone else would tell that story for you. And that's something you may not like. And also, nor it's factual, right? And in the case of Iran, I saw that over and over and over again, and I thought, you know what, they need to tell their own stories, and this was my effort to hopefully connect the real people of Iran to our friends here in the United States and the West.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important too what you said about um, telling stories that are factual. And
Yes.
the social media being the platform that it is, you know, a lot of the times it's extremely easy to get emotional about a post, about the wording of a post, and want to be an activist towards that. But a lot of people might not have the any true facts. Maybe because, you know, social media doesn't circulate that kind of, or maybe there's censorship. There's so many reasons for that. But is there what would you say about people getting credible information here in the States about Iran?
Thank you for that question. First of all, I have to say, because you know, my ritual is when I wake up, I listen to NPR, BBC World, Al Jazeera. I need to know, okay, what's going on, while I get ready, or you know, just make my coffee. So I do spend a lot of time reading and also seeing, okay, who covered what, who's doing what. And I have to say that Iran has been in the news and has been covered by credible news organizations. And yes, thank you for saying that. Social media is not a news platform. There are no editors. There are no, you know, unless you're following a credible journalist. But activists, many of whom do fantastic work, they are not journalists, right? And there's a difference. And in fact, this was something I talk a lot in my class, difference between activism and journalism, right? And so factual information come from credible news sources, news organizations. And we saw the danger of this, you know, misinformation in our own politics here in the United States. So I really, really, really encourage folks who are interested on Iran to go to credible news sources. Don't believe everything you see on social media. Don't think that just because someone has, you know, hundreds of thousands of followers, or you know, whatever, what they post is truthful and credible and accurate, right? Also, if I want to say that, you know, Iranian regime's brutality and lack of any sense and care for essentially human rights or any rights is very obvious, right?
Yeah.
And so an example of such was, when news was circulating that, quote, Iranian government is about to execute 15,000 protesters,
Mm.
right? And again, I say this prefacing the fact that what the Iranian government is doing and has done by arresting thousands of people, killing, hundreds, that's vile, that's unacceptable. It reflects their brutality and why they should not be. But also facts are important, and what came out of the parliament, quote unquote, was the fact that some majority of the folks said we need to carry out the harshest of sentences, right? So this 15,000 about to be executed came out as a result of misinformation and sort of social media and information that was trending online. And I even remember Justin Trudeau the other day retract his tweet, and so many of these figures, heads of states, deleted this information. And so, it's important. It's important how we amplify the story. It's
Yeah.
important where we get our facts. But at the end of the day, I encourage people to focus on Iranian people's stories. Know that, just because someone posts something is not true, and go to credible sources, go to credible journalists, and read about Iran, read about Iran's history. If anyone's interested, there's so many great books out there. There's so many great literature out there that people can try to connect with this country and its rich history and of course its people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I want to be mindful of your time, so if it's
No,
possible to
no, it's okay. Of
question,
course.
um, how what would you say to people who want to get involved? What are your thoughts? What are your tips? What is your advice for people who feel in their whole entire body that they want to be a part of what's happening?
I think that's a great question. Number one, let's focus as Americans, folks in the United States, let's focus on humanizing Iran and its people.
Mm.
Let's focus on their stories. Let's focus on connecting with them by just mentioning their names, by just knowing about them, knowing their culture, knowing the society, and understanding that Iranian people are different than the regime. One of the things, Ava, that frustrates me is so many Iranian Americans in the United States always shied away from saying the word Iran, or I'm Iranian, or I'm Persian, or just because it was always politicized. And I encourage every single Iranian American in this country to say I'm Iranian. Be the ambassadors of your country. Be the ambassadors of your culture in lieu of having a credible government to represent us. Be the ambassadors that we need. And so I encourage people to consume the news from credible sources, find ways to learn about Iran and Iranians more. I encourage folks, especially media platforms, those in the creative space, to find ways to humanize this nation, humanize its people, as I did in my book, for example, and also reshare, repost, continue the conversation, but again, of credible forces and sources, and be a force for change in your own way. And by the way, that doesn't mean posting every single day, on the hour, on the dot, but keep talking about it, keep pushing the conversation, and that's what everyday ordinary people can do.
Yes. Wow. Amazing. That's wonderful. I actually got a question from a local NYC actor slash activist. Her name is Lila Kashnudi. And she wanted to specifically ask you, how to be active and engaged while also keeping up, with your own health and obligations, etc. Having boundaries as an activist, but staying sharp and being a leading source of info. How do you find the balance of that?
How do I find the balance?
Yes. How do you find the balance of from an Iranian actress here in New York City
Yes.
wants to be part of this conversation,
Yes.
is and to uh, get credible information and also be the source of information for her friends who don't know much about Iran, but also
Yes.
I feel like there might be a balance slash burnout there. What would your advice to her be, or to anybody who's listening who is in the same position?
Sure, that's a great question. Number one, I think, Eva, authenticity is so important.
Mm,
Being being authentic and also being empathetic. And people can see through that, really. Folks who have never talked about Iran, and I'm not talking about, Americans. I'm talking about Iranians, who never talked about Iran, but are, just suddenly think, they think, okay, we should talk about Iran. Even so, it's still good, right? But be authentic. Tell the truth. Be the truth teller. And again, I can't emphasize on getting your information from credible sources. And like I said, you don't have to be constantly sharing or posting to be the better activist or a better voice. No, be authentic. Be truthful to yourself,
mm,
and how you like to tell that story and how you like to amplify those voices. I'm very selective in the information I share. I'm trying to do more of the lives, and talk to people and answer questions. But I tend to put out credible information. I care about context, history, background, nuance, just because that's my job, as a journalist and a reporter. But I think everyone can be an active voice, but it first starts from yourself. Whatever you do has to come from knowledge, has to come
mm.
from facts, has to come from strong information that you can back up. But fundamentally, I think we just should show that we care, and empathy is the key. And I think one of the biggest outcomes of this movement in Iran, these protests, have been, this connection, and empathy that millions of people around the world are building with Iranian people who, for the last 40 years, have been isolated by their government.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for answering Layla's question, and thank you so much for taking the time. I know that I can't imagine how booked and busy you are, but it means so much to me personally for you just shining a light on things that um, are happening, and absolutely with the credible source. I myself put that post up because I saw it on Viola Davis's page and I was like, oh my gosh. So thank you for that. You've really, you've really just been an angel. So
Oh,
thank
thank you. Thank you so much. Again, let's continue talking about Iran, everyone. Let's continue pushing, to amplify people's voices, but with accuracy, and facts. And let's remember that these are millions of people like anyone else in the world with the same hopes and dreams and ambitions. And they're fighting for their chance to be players and active on the international stage. And they deserve all the rights that we have, in the United States and elsewhere in the world. Eva, thank you so much for having me. It was a privilege to talk to you and everyone who's listening. And I hope it was useful. By the way, we did answer a lot of questions that we got in our DMs.
Yes,
So yeah, we didn't ask the questions separately, but I think we covered those
absolutely.
questions. So I just wanted to shout out and thanks so much for the folks who asked questions.
Well, thank you again, Tara. Thank you so much for everybody who
Thank you.
joined, and I hope you all have a great day. Tara, thank you so much, and I'll
Thank
hopefully.
you. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
See you later.